Hello, my name is Jenny. I'm a guide at the Geelong Botanic Gardens. I'm a volunteer guide. Before we begin, I will acknowledge the Wudauwarrung people who were the first carers for this land and acknowledge their elders past and present. Today I'm going to take you on a tour of these beautiful Geelong Botanic Gardens. This map gives us a good look at how the gardens are laid out, basically in terms of the centuries in which these parts of the gardens were developed. Here we have the 21st century garden, which was opened in 2000. It is a dry area garden. Then we move into the more traditional garden, which is the 20th century garden. And here, where there is a dip in the land, this was the site of the first nursery garden that was developed in the 19th century. In 1851, 81 hectares of land were gazetted for a new Geelong Botanical Gardens. In 1854, a fence was put around all of this land and the first carriageways were laid out. Now, what you see today is quite different from what was here before. It was a fairly treeless, lightly treed really, promontory of land that was shared with a lime burning enterprise and with a powder magazine. In 1857, the area behind me here became much more intensively planted. So let us go in and I will introduce you to the fourth oldest botanical garden in Australia. The 21st century garden and Podbury Drive, which leads to it from Eastern Beach, were designed by the landscape architect Chris Dance and by the then director 12 in time of drought. The shape of this garden and the dramatic structures at the entrance refer to the maritime history of this place, as many plants moved in and out of the port of Geelong. Many thousands, in fact, were exchanged. This section of the garden showcases plants from different areas of Australia and also of the southern continents of Australia and the South Americas. The plants in this section of the garden have features which make them survivors in dry times and in dry areas. For example, behind me there's this bottle tree from southeastern Queensland, and it has fairly sparse leaves that are tough, and it has this wonderful swollen trunk, which means that it can store water. Our tour takes us now to the entrance to the 20th century garden, which are marked by the gates that Mr. Hanson made in his metalworks at Chilwell and donated in 1964. You will see that these gardens are very different and reflect the fashion of the times. They have sweeps of lawn, huge trees, and they were a favourite place when they were opened, and they remain a favourite place for us now. I would now like to introduce you to our first director, Mr. Daniel Bunce. He was appointed in 1857, and by 1859 he already had established a nursery in which he had more than 2,500 plants. The lady with him is looking a little caught out, as indeed she is. This rather guilty looking lady has been pinching flowers, and in this case it's the desert pea, And Daniel Bunce would have collected the seed to this on one of his excursions into Central Australia. Now, behind me, you will see the conservatory, which has very recently been refurbished, and it is full of colourful, wonderful plants. And here we are now at the top of the silver border. The plants here are also adapted for dry conditions. On the right, you will find the tea house, where there is excellent coffee, and behind that you will find the Otway fern glade. Good morning. Hello. The terraces take us down through the different areas of the rose garden. The most modern plants are at the top of the terrace, and the species and ancient rose types are at the bottom beds. Behind me are the urns which mark the original entrance to the Geelong Botanic Gardens, and there would have been a carriageway which swept to this particular place, and in 1897 that carriageway was planted with variegated elms for Queen Victoria's Silver Jubilee. They are now a grand sight, and there they are. Our route now takes us through these urns down to the perennial border. This is designed and maintained by volunteers. At the moment it's looking a little bit pared back for winter, coming into spring now, but later on and through summer and autumn it is an absolute highlight of our Geelong Botanical Gardens. Behind me is the new parterre garden. It's now planted up with spring flowers and should be absolutely beautiful in a few weeks' time. It lies between the paths to the north and the walnut lawn to the south. You will see in the distance that there is a wonderful, huge Jubaea chilensis. This is the logo of the Friends of the Geelong Botanic Gardens. And it is amazing to think that it was once within a huge fernery structure. There are several interesting historical structures in this section of the garden. Behind me we have the trail fountain. We have already passed the Hitchcock fountain, and in this section you will also find the old cabman shelter, the Raddenberry Fern House, and the original Customs House. Continuing on our walk, we are now going to go right through the palm area. Many bamboos, many palms, and some most beautiful shady plants in this area. This will take us down to the Pelargonium House. Is the place where there is a display of beautiful pelargoniums. It is the Elizabeth E. Clark Pelargonium House, and it was opened in 1972. It now also houses a beautiful marble statue of Ruth. The cranes here are quite interesting. They came from Japan in 1868. And they were at St Albans Park and then Eastern Beach, and now they live here. I'm finishing this tour where I always do when I take visitors through our gardens. This is the Ginkgo biloba, and it is also known as the maidenhair tree. And it was planted around 1859, one of the first things that Daniel Bunce, whom we met earlier, planted here in the Geelong Botanic Gardens. We think that this is probably the oldest ginkgo in Australia. Very soon it will cover itself with maidenhair shaped, beautiful fresh green leaves, a magnificent sight. Many weddings are held under this beautiful tree. There is much more to be said about these beautiful botanic gardens. However, I hope that you have enjoyed your tour, and I look forward to seeing you yourselves in these wonderful gardens.